I learned of my husband's affair yesterday. We met in high school when I was 17 and he was 18. We were dumb and broken kids who fell in love and started a life together. We had our first child when I was 19 and got married and had our second when I was 21. We were growing and beating generational traumas and lifestyles. It has been almost 20 years since we met and 16 since we were married. I invested my entire adult life into my family. The past year has been so difficult. While we're in the best place financially, our children are now teenagers who have both been struggling mentally. Our oldest has been admitted twice in the last 12 months and my youngest started taking a turn in that direction too once he started his freshman year in high school. I have not been myself the last year, to say the least. I worry so much for my kids and I've been doing everything I can to help them through these times and see a future for themselves. But it has created some massive anxiety for myself and even depression as I battle it alone. My husband works night shift at a factory. He's been the most successful he's ever been at a job. He's been there almost 10 years now, and before this he couldn't hold a job for more than a year and a half, so I've always let him know how proud I was of him for this path he's taken career-wise and grateful I am for his work at the company and opportunities for our family. He works 5 nights a week and sometimes picks up extra nights when we need the money. He has a new truck he got last year. He recently started getting massages monthly to help with the stress in his body and getting professional haircuts, so I figured he was just making money to pay for that kind of extra stuff. We had a completely random to me falling out in October. We had a fun day at the Renaissance Festival with drinks and friends. He was a little off to me that day. I put my arm around him in a line at one point and he looked around and acted weird and said, "Is someone looking at us or something?" I didn't know why he was being this way. We went about the day and in our way home he was exceptionally cold and quiet. I'm sure he wanted to have sex after we got him, but that definitely wasn't putting me in any kind of mood. I took some Motrin for a headache and washed up and laid down as he went to sit at his computer. He texted and asked if I was going to bed and I said yes, I think so. Then "I love you, good night," and he said "I love you, good night." 15 minutes later he texted me, from the other room, that he wants to separate and he isn't happy. I was shocked. I knew we had been in a rough spot, but in 20 years after all the things we've been through and grown from, this was the first time divorce or separation has ever been even mentioned. I asked if he could talk to me in person and he did. He spent all night telling me how unhappy he'd been, which I can't discredit that. He had been, but I didn't realize the extent. He never mentioned anything about how bad it was. He said he couldn't be around me and he walked on eggshells about my mood. That's fair. I had been pretty overwhelmed and resentful to his carefree life. He also said I lacked physical affection to him. Touch is more than our daily hug as he leaves when I get home. We see each other maybe 10 hours a week. He goes to work, I do everything else, but I also work 26 HRS a week. I asked if there was someone else because this was so out of the blue, my gut was telling me there was something else. He said no. I wanted to take responsibility for my actions if I was being awful, but I honestly didn't feel I was being that terrible. Well, we've been working on things since then. I have been being more affectionate and attentive to him. We have been having way more sex and things were really starting to get better, and told me things were so much better. That he's felt more love in the past 2 months than he has in a long time. That's on me and I'm ready to be better for him. However, I've had this sinking feeling in my gut that something else happened before that night in October. I couldn't shake it and I started noticing he was sleeping with phone under his pillow more and literally showering with it every day. In 2 months he hasn't left it anywhere away from him. It's been eating away at me for a couple of nights, so yesterday I made a post asking if should ask him to through it. 20 years together and I think I could deserve a peace of mind if there was really no one else. I decided when I got home I was going to do it, but instead I choked up and looked him in the eyes and asked, "Did you have an affair?" I didn't even have to see his phone. He looked at me and said yes. And told me about the woman from his work that he talked to, hooked up with, talked about being together, planned a whole life with without me while I was at home with our kids. He says it was 3 or 5 times they had sex, sometime maybe in August, and he ended it by the time October happened. And to her he wanted to make it work with me first if he could. He stayed home from work last night. And we talked and he answered all my questions. I think that kind of helped, but it also made the pain worse. He says he loves me and wants us to stay and how happy he's been and how he fucked everything up. I'm contacting a therapist today. I can't imagine how I could ever get over this. He decided I wasn't worth fighting for before this. He knew this would destroy me and he still did it. He looked me in the face every day and knew what he was doing. He didn't care then. I don't know that I can stay. I know Reddit is going to be harsh about it, but I just need to hear some advice. I don't want to throw away my whole life here. He said it just felt so good to have someone that interested in him. I feel awful for that and I can understand somehow. I still feel like I wasn't worth a conversation beforehand to him and I don't know how I'll ever feel worthy of love again. Comment? Honestly, you already did the bigger thing by trying to work things through when he hit you with wanting to separate with no conversation leading up to it. Then you discover that he cheated on you multiple times and planned out another life with this chick without giving you any chance prior. That alone would be it for me. Now, he's changing his tune and saying he doesn't know. Speaks to her every day? I'm sorry, but no. You deserve way better and what he's doing is his problem and he is the one to blame. Make the decision for him, as hard as it is, and cut him loose. Be free of his infidelity and lies. He doesn't deserve you. Staying with him now, you're allowing him to demean you in your love and marriage and you're allowing him to steer the ship of whether he wants to leave you for someone else. Please, do not do that. Take control and let him go. Ask him to leave and file for divorce. You will be better in the long run and will have peace without his toxicity. I don't know what to tell you. But you are young still with your whole life ahead of you. For perspective, a lot of people don't even get married until they are in their mid-30s. Or even have their first kid. You can do anything. Reconcile. Divorce. And you are still young enough to have anything you want. This is not your fault. He should have come to you with any feelings he was having. That's what you're there for. Nothing is an excuse for infidelity. I think you are handling this in the best way possible. You are remarkable. Don't hold anything back from him. Let him know everything you feel every time you do. If you want to make it work, you have to set clear boundaries and he must accept them in full. He gets no input? Oh, and he has to cut off contact with this woman. All contact? Forever? It's actually the biggest rule of reconciliation. Therapist will tell you about it. Meaning one of them can't work at the warehouse anymore. You can always inform HR and likely get them both fired though, but then no paychecks? Also, if she has a spouse, they have to be told. Whatever happens now, I hope the best for you. You aren't alone here. You can come here and vent anytime you feel you need to. If he has contact with her, of any kind, the affair is still ongoing. It's a chemical addiction. There is a branch of neuroscience that studies the psychology of people in an affair. All these neurotransmitters that are released by the brain when in love and having sex are intensified by the taboo and fear of being found out. The sex is supposed to be the best you've ever had, and can't be compared to anything else. They will think the AP has magical genitalia. It's one of the reasons it's hard to give up an AP, and one of the reasons they start seeing their spouse as controlling or a jailer. This leads to heavy feelings of resentment. It's because you are keeping them from getting their fix. It's all addiction behavior. You have a rough road ahead. I promise you it won't be pretty. I also promise that no matter the end result, you are gonna be okay. It will be a tough road ahead. My wife cheated on me too. For a whole year. Every day I saw her, she knew what she was doing. It hurt so much when she confessed. I couldn't understand why. Just lame excuses. Try therapy, it may help. It helped us a bit. We still together for the kids. But it's tough to forget. Forgiving was easy. But the doubts and daily suspicions are still there. So to fix that, I work on myself. Get financially stable. Pick up hobbies. Enjoy my own personal time. Meet friends and make new ones. Revolve life around yourself and kids. I put the kids first on my list, not her anymore. You too, get out of house. Get a job. Put more family and home responsibilities back on him. If you want to stay together, make him jealous. Make him desire you, make him fix his ways. Cheating is terrible. It messed me up. Just be sad and destructive for a bit, not too long. Get a therapist and seek advice from a lawyer. And get tested for STDs. Speak to several divorce attorneys and pick one. Ask him to over-out, remove 50% of all joint money, and put it into an account in your name only. If you reconcile, ask him to sign a post-nup with an infidelity clause. Get a full STD screening. If you live in an at-fault state, sue his AP for alienation of affection or emotional distress. Consider reporting his affair to his HR after speaking with your divorce attorney. Story 2. My husband has been going through my phone for the past 3 years without me knowing. My husband has been going through my phone for the past 3 years without me knowing. I just caught him red-handed the other night. He said that 3 years ago, he had a bad feeling and went through my phone and saw that in my incognito browser, I had searched the contact info for the lawyer I used for our prenup. The prenup is to protect his assets, and I've always been okay with that. Every year around our anniversary, I send the lawyer who represented me a simple thank you card, a quick update on life, and that his kindness/generosity has still never been lost on me. I don't come from much, and this lawyer treated me like his own daughter. That is the only reason I can imagine. I was Googling his contact info, and the timeline adds up. Why it was incognito, I don't have a good answer for, but I clearly felt the need to hide it from him. Here is where I am struggling with this. We have been together for 10 years and married 5 with an amazingly brilliant son. We've both been in individual therapy for a while and also couples therapy. We both have a lot of trauma from our childhoods, which trickles into our marriage. Things have been absolutely amazing for the past 6 months. That was also the time that I started to notice he was going through my phone. I never caught him red-handed, but there were enough close calls that I was suspicious, but I just didn't want to confront him. What if I was wrong? How hurtful would it be to accuse him of something he didn't do? And I would feel like an awful idiot. Finally, when I did confront him, he gaslighted me and basically said, "Why are you being so suspicious?" I didn't do anything. I stuck to my guns, and he did cave eventually. There is nothing in my phone that would ever imply I am doing anything I shouldn't. 80% of the content on my phone is embroidery or skincare. However, my notes are another story. In my notes, I write my deepest, darkest, most personal thoughts and feelings. It is basically my diary. It's therapeutic for me to get things out in writing. My inner world is something I have always kept close to my chest, and I have a lot of trauma that is the cause of it. In my notes, I practice what I will say in therapy, private and intimate conversations I need to have with others or even just with myself. I've questioned my sexuality and my mental state, and that just scratches the surface. The idea of anyone else ever having access to that information about me makes my stomach turn. It is information about me I am not ready for anyone else but to have access to. He claims he has never gone through my notes, but I find it extremely hard to believe that over the course of 3 years he never has. My notes are also the only thing even slightly interesting that would be worth coming back for. Unless he has suddenly developed a deep passion for WebMD, embroidery, and trash TV subs. I am extremely hurt. I feel betrayed and violated by this breach of privacy. I have always trusted my husband blindly, and now that is gone. I feel mortified and humiliated just at the thought of him seeing the notes I wrote. We have therapy next week and we'll be addressing this. My husband is an amazing person but has deep-rooted abandonment issues that he is working through. Other than this, he really is amazing. We split all of the household and childcare duties evenly, and he honestly gives me a break more than he does for himself. We've never raised our voices at each other or become violent. But I can't help but feel this was so manipulative and controlling. I keep connecting these little dots of like, oh wow. He suddenly understood this about me, seemingly overnight. Or he would sprinkle things into our conversations that wasn't wild that he knew but just never felt right that he knew, always down to the exact detail but presented vaguely enough I was able to brush it off. Am I overreacting? Is my anger justified? Comment. He read your notes for sure. Be more concerned with his lying to throw you off his scent. That kind of deceit is very scarring to think about because it's not what he's doing with the information now but what he could do later. It's a positive to recognize that he's taken your private thoughts and used that information to try and deepen your bond. This is more likely a subconscious behavior stemming from his abandonment issues. The closer he can get/feel that he's managing you well, the more secure he'll feel in the relationship. But just keep in mind that is a very close cousin to also manipulating you, and at this point he's already shown that he isn't above doing that. Up to you to determine if you want to carry on in your marriage with the pros outweighing the cons. You have every right to be frustrated. What he's done is a huge breach of trust. I have zero doubt that he's looked through your notes, because there's very clearly a sense of entitlement. He feels justified in looking through your private space to quell his unfounded fears that are rooted in his own insecurity, which he's obviously not addressed in therapy. The fact that he doubled down and made you seem in the wrong for asking is also a very unnerving response. I had a partner who did this to me, but it escalated. I provided my location so I could be tracked to help his fears that I was cheating. He monitored my phone and read my messages. He got access to my Google account through digging, and I believe my Instagram, and could then monitor me even without my phone present. This is very serious, especially since he tried to lie about it, and should be addressed in therapy. You have every right to have your own personal life. Your relationship doesn't need to be your whole life, and you're entitled to having your own identity and privacy. Anyone who says differently is either grossly insecure, which they need to resolve, or they are cheating and assume you are doing the same. In my last relationship, both of those were what caused his behavior. It's either due to his insecurities or he might be projecting from his own behavior. You could ask to go through his phone and see if he starts getting nervous. Personally, my wife and I have an open phone policy. Since I don't know what information you wrote to yourself in your notes, you might consider asking yourself why you think your husband shouldn't be aware of your feelings or concerns, or why you should be able to hide these personal things from him. You could choose to think he's being manipulative and controlling, or you could also choose to think he's loving and attentive and trying to be the best husband he can be because he sometimes gets you from reading your notes. I'd address it in counseling, both from his perspective and your perspective on looking through each other's phone, including what could be on the phones that either of you think is really worth trying to hide from each other.